Warmly welcome to our seminar titled Can Gamers Save the World? Organized by us at LM International together with Engineering Without Borders Sweden, Openhack, Coding for Humanity, and our close partner Robotech Labs, Tanzania. Most of us can agree that the triple crisis we face today requires new innovative and digital solutions, as well as broader partnerships across both sectors and borders. Now, gamers, techies and programmers have over and over proven to be phenomenal problem solvers and developers, often active in broad networks across the globe. Still, these actors are almost entirely excluded from the development cooperation sphere. And that is what we want to change, both by targeting this group here today, but also in our daily work, both at home in Sweden and in countries such as Somalia, Tanzania, and South Sudan. We also see a strong link with the youth, peace and security agenda, where youth, for example, in programming, create their own jobs in emerging markets and fragile states, contributing to the national economy, as opposed to running the risk of eventually becoming radicalized. Now, during the upcoming 45 minutes, we will consider what could happen if gamers, techies, and programmers were given a larger role in development cooperation. With only 8 years left to realize the Agenda 2030, we ask ourselves, are we bold enough to invest in these actors as global change agents? And if so, what are the future pathways, methods, and initiatives that we need to explore? I'm very glad I'm not doing this alone, because with me here today to uncover the hidden catalytical potential amongst this group, we have an exciting panel, all bringing their unique perspective to the subject at hand. We have Mohammed Goled from WWF Youth, a project manager and also an active gamer yourself. We have Lucas Leander, CEO of Openhack, Coding for Humanity. And with us on Zoom, we have Hussein Sharkat, founder of Robotech Labs, Tanzania. And last but not least, we have Patrick Stålgren, who's head of the Unit for Strategic Partnership, Private Sector, Innovation and New Methods at SIDA. That's a long title, but welcome panel.
Thank you.
We are delighted to have you with us all today and eager to absorb all your knowledge and expertise. But before we dive in, we would like to start by showing a short movie, actually featuring some of you with us today. I am looking at you, Hussein, that really highlights the importance of digital transformation, inclusion, and greater interconnectivity. So enjoy.
So it is very, very essential that at this time of crisis, we need interconnectivity in terms of communication and information.
We know that networks are the foundation of all human interaction. In fact, we can see networks everywhere.
Because we are connected together as a planet.
We see it in the interdependencies in natural biospheres, in human interconnections, and in our online co-creation. As human beings, we are basically like cells in a body. We all have the power and the agency to start from ourselves, to impact our immediate surroundings, which in turn can expand to affect change globally.
I'm sure we have people who have solutions to these problems. It's just that the solutions are stuck in people's head.
Working across areas such as tech and innovation, we truly understand that harnessing the power of our connections is how we solve all major challenges.
In this digital age, development and poverty reduction is inherently intertwined with access to the internet. we see more and more examples of how technology can change livelihoods for the better.
We know that we must work together to reach our common global goals. Decision makers, creatives, innovators, techies. No single actor can do it alone.
People need to be empowered.
If we do not come together now,
we believe that pulling the effort together will drive the change we need in order to serve the underserved community in the country.
Digital safety is key to women empowerment and self-actualization.
So we are all connected by the decisions that are made by the politicians and the decisions and choices that we make in our personal lives as well.
For innovators and entrepreneurs, the only way forward is to take bold action towards a vision. Action creates inspiration and strengthens our determination and ability to solve pressing challenges.
If we want to solve problems like hunger, poverty, climate change, global conflict, obesity, I believe that we need to aspire to play games online for at least 21 billion hours a week by the end of the next decade.
Commitments to a sustainable future. Together, we can be the force behind the transformation that is needed.
If we're able to have resources or solutions that involve the community coming together and working together, I think the impact is something beyond comprehension.
It is important that networks at the global level work in tandem with the local community in achieving a nature-based solutions to the triple crises that we are facing today.
Because we are still in control to create whatever future we want to.
Join us in the ever-expanding network of changemakers.
Welcome back to those of you tuning in online. I feel warmer after this. Do you feel, are you ready? Because then I think we should dive into this. Before I do, I just also want to flag that we will open up for questions from the audience at the end. So if a question comes up, as they often do during the discussion with the panel, please make a little mental note and we will proceed to them later on. Okay, Mohammed, WWF Swedish Youth, welcome again. And you are an active gamer yourself, right?
Yes, I am.
So naturally, therefore, I'm super curious. How would you describe the gaming culture, and what potential links do you see with Agenda 2030 and global development?
Yes, what I personally think we can find connection to the Agenda 2030 is that games as a whole is a medium, just like movies, just like books, just like any other medium. And that can always be connected to two different things. For example, if we're talking about it in an educational purpose, we can when it comes to games, like you teach so much without even, or you learn so much without even knowing it. So it's like it's a thing that you learn with time by playing video games, and it's just like any other medium, I would say. So we can connect it to these different agendas through that way, I would say.
And what potential do you see amongst the gaming community as actors of transformative change? I think you already started talking about it a little, but if you want to develop, what potential is there?
Yes, just like any other medium when it comes to music, movies, or whatever it is, people would take inspiration from it, I would say. If it's a way that you can learn things, you can always take it with you to different places, whether it comes to activism or your work life or anything like that. These are things you take with you from video games, from any other medium. So I would say in like that way, it of course, video game is such a broad thing, but you can always find ways to like take something with you from games, I would say.
And following up on that, what have you learned from gaming?
Yes.
I mean, what's the toolbox that you carry with you from playing games?
The biggest thing I would say it would be like the English language. It's the thing that I have learned through gaming, through media, and not through. I wouldn't say through school or any other. Yes, so I would say I have taken that with me from a very early stage, and then my tech. I have become a lot more interested in tech through gaming. It started with that, and then you kind of like you build a computer, and then you like go forward and start doing other things. So I would say it's like it's a small flame that will build up to something bigger. So those two things. So English and my tech interest, I would say.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad. Who knew? Maybe we should. Clearly, kids should be able to, or should be allowed to play more video games. Just a little hint to you out there. Well, so now we've heard from a gamer. I would therefore like to turn to you, Lucas, who actually organize gamers, programmers, techies. From your perspective as the CEO of Openhack, Coding for Humanity, what do you see that we can learn from both the gaming and tech industry when it comes to ensuring transformative change and realization of the 2030 agenda?
Yes, thank you. So I think there's a lot we can learn from the tech industry and from gamers, programmers, designers, whether it's skill sets that you learn from gaming in terms of networking and coming together digitally. So we've been organizing hackathons since 2015, where we gather programmers, designers, and people with a tech interest. A lot of them are gamers, I believe. And we've been gathering these people on hackathons to solve humanitarian and social issues. These are people that have an enormous drive and will to contribute. People who have technical interests, who are programmers, who have been working perhaps on open source projects, learning from gaming and coming from that industry, who have a will to contribute. And it's amazing. I think for every hackathon that I attend still, I'm always amazed by the energy and the co-creation, the innovation in these events. These are people that come together who have different skill sets, different backgrounds, who haven't been working together in the past at all, people who don't know each other at all, who create amazing solutions. And I think for the hackathon side of it, the things that enable this is getting these people allowing these people with different backgrounds to come together, a mix of people who haven't worked before, setting them under a limited time frame. So you're giving them an challenge, of course, presented by someone with the right an industry expert, basically, or an organization that has legitimacy on this problem. Putting them on a limited time frame under competitive spirit, so it's fun. It allows you to put all your energy into this problem for a limited amount of time, and setting the right environment, a playful environment where people can have fun, meet new people, and create without any constraints. You can use your skill sets, try new languages if it's coding, learn new stuff while you're doing it. And under a sense of transparency, so everyone is working under equal parameters, whether you have different skill sets, limited or less limited knowledge about the problem at hand, and also people who might come in for a limited amount of time, or people who might be committed to actually pursuing this solution for even after the hackathon. And I think what we can learn from that, from the tech industry, is the sense of playfulness and curiosity that exists, to be able to try new stuff and come together and not being afraid to explore new solutions. And the second thing, I think, would be the harvesting the power of community, seeing how gamers and programmers work on their own, whether if it's playing a video game and coming together with other people, or if it's gathering in an open source project with people around the world, trying to solve an issue with your skill sets and just meeting other people and doing it on your free will, with your drive. I think that's something we can harvest and learn from a lot.
Certainly. I tend to agree a lot. It's that sense of community, but also starting doing it on equal grounds, and to be able to explore that moving forward. Again, I think you've grasped, or you touched on it as well, but if you care to develop, why is inclusion of this group so key then in development cooperation? And given the Coding for Humanity initiative, could you give a concrete examples of when gamers, techies, programmers have in fact coded for humanity and transformative change?
Sure, I'll give it a try. First, I think we can all agree that technology is an important aspect, trying to solve or building any solutions today, whether it's creating new within in the industry, basically, and especially if we're trying to solve the Agenda 2030, the problems that we have at hand. Technology is one part of that, one important part of it, for creating a sustainable and efficient solutions to create a sustainable future, basically. And I think that's why it's important to include people within the tech industry in an early stage, to make sure that we take this aspect into account when we are creating new ways of working, new solutions, making it efficient from the start, and making sure we get the full perspective. I think this goes not only for the tech industry, but actually getting people with a will to contribute, getting them in at an early stage. That include gamers and programmers, designers, tech-savvy volunteers, if you will, but anyone who's willing to contribute.
And what was like the latest theme that you came together and tried to solve?
Yeah,
one of them.
Yeah, yes, sorry, for a concrete example. So I think any hackathon that we organize, people actually come together and code for humanity. Just by, you show up, you have a challenge that you work on, presented by a case contributor. And the latest hackathon we had was actually with Engineering for Humanity, was the name of it. So it's a hackathon where we tried a new approach to it, not only including people for the tech industry, but also engineers and people who have different skill sets. So we had cases from Engineers Without Borders, both in Sweden and in Norway and Finland and Germany. And we invited anyone who is within that, engineers or tech industry people, or people who want to contribute to these issues, whether it's sanitation or sustainable construction or energy. But we have, a lot of examples in terms of what is the outcome. This was an event that we run in March, so it's still to see. Was a lot of interesting solutions, but still to see what is the actual results of those and how it can be implemented. But in the past, we've had organized hackathons where we gathered up to 7,000 participants in the Hack the Crisis initiative that we did with DIG in 2020, where we had, I think, in the end, 400 solutions. 60 of those were picked up and supported after the hackathon. We had, if I'm not mistaken, 11 of them that actually we supported and that grown into solutions used today, whether it's used as individual startups or implemented within the industry or by different government agencies even.
Amazing. Thank you. We will get back more to that later on, but it's now time to leave Sweden for a little bit and turn to the screen to welcome Hussein from Robotech Labs. How's it going? How are you, Hussein?
Oh, I'm actually very well, thank you. I'm just really sad I couldn't make it to Sweden, unfortunately, due to the complications in the visa, but I'm glad to be at least online with everyone here today.
I am still crying at night, but I'm also very happy that you could join us online
next time. Me too.
Next time.
Definitely next time.
Indeed. You are actually driving change in Tanzania together with young techies and programmers. Please share with us, how does it look on a daily basis for you at the coastal area of Tanga?
So people actually have a lot of interest when it comes to Tanga. For instance, the history of Tanga was so beautiful once upon a time, where it was known as the powerhouse of Tanzania in the early 1990s. But unfortunately, as industrialization took over and the major markets moved to Dar es Salaam, which is 6 hours away from Tanga, the youth ecosystem kind of like was surprised with what was happening. Like there was a whole industrial park available here once upon a time with a lot of development, a lot of prototyping, a lot of testing, and eventually everything moved away. So when I was introduced to Tanga in early 2021, I came across a very quiet, dead so-called town where no one was really actually coming out because of the culture and tradition here in Tanga, where it's a very relaxed coastal life, unfortunately. But then spending a few of my time here and then getting in deeper with the community, I came to realize that the majority of the population here are youngsters who have amazing ideas, who have a lot of skills that they want to, get out there. But unfortunately, there has not been any exposure for them. There hasn't been any form of training or hands-on experience for them that they can actually develop these things or take their ideas one step ahead through skill transfer or knowledge transfer per se. So I decided and said that since there is no innovation or innovation hub here in Tanga, why not take the leap and start our own? And I started working in one of the vocational training schools here in Tanga called Tanga Technical School. Well, I have been working with more than 400 or 500 students who have hidden talents, if I may say, of which some of them are actually very quiet programmers, very few hackers, very few breakers, makers. And that kind of inspired me and said, hey, what we can actually do with these people is actually develop them with relevant training and skills, but at the same time, connect them to actual problems in their own society where they can actually use these skills, complement that, actually solve the problems. And I think what Lucas had mentioned as well is the hackathon movement, right? So what I have been doing for the past 1 year today, as it marks my 1 year calendar today, it's actually to be precise. I have been working with industrialists, with hospitals, with people in the agriculture, in different sectors, right? And identifying problems that actually persist in the current ecosystem here in Tanga. And what we do is things like digital fabrication, including laser cutting, 3D printing, and much more. And then we open the hackathon as a platform. So what happens is that the students now who are working in these courses or challenges are then linked to the problem statement directly, where they actually get to test these prototypes with the industry directly. And then the industries then decide if they want to iterate it further and make it into a product that can actually be used in their facilities. So on a daily basis, we're actually running around everywhere, scoping out these problems with students themselves and saying, hey, we have a problem here. You have the skills and you have the solution. Now we have a time frame, and within this time frame, whatever skills you have learned over the past few months, be it programming, coding, gaming, fabrication, whatever you have in your hand, take it one step ahead, solve the problem, test and deploy it, and potentially you will then see how it actually feels taking your idea from just a classroom to an actual field on the ground where it's actually being scaled and tested for real life applications.
But strategically then, what does it really take to fully involve young techies and programmers, and maybe also taking it a step further and involving them in the national development agenda, for example?
That's a very good question. So I think that begins with the policies and the advocacy of the government itself. You see, today in Tanzania, if you look at the education system that it is today, everything is very much theoretically oriented. We are not actually creating content or curriculum that actually link people to these kind of sectors. The innovation itself is so diverse that I think the lack of knowledge or perspective to actually jump into is very, very difficult. So I think the main thing we need to figure out is working with government agencies, with policy and advisors to ensure that these things actually start at the grassroots level, so that as they go ahead, they're not actually being left behind, both technically and with inclusivity at the same time. So I really hope then, as we continue doing, we're a few I won't say key players, but a few people like ourselves who have a bad habit of breaking and making things, trying to inspire people to see that these so-called prototypes or small examples that we're working with can be led towards this change that we want to have of the government to actually adopt these things on a bigger scale, and towards the SDGs all linked towards the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. Hopefully we should be able to do it.
Thank you, Hussein. We will be back with you shortly. But before doing so, I would now like to turn to our final panelist, Patrik Stålgren. You lead the unit for strategic partnership at SIDA. I'm not going to say the whole title again because I'm afraid I'll mess up. I nailed it once. What new and innovative methods do you see that the gaming and tech industry could bring to Swedish Development Corporation and potentially actually contribute to a more effective realization of the 2030 agenda?
Shortly put, a lot. I think it's very clear from the first three interventions here how rich a process and engagement that we're looking at here. I'd like to just take 1 second to step back a bit from the hackathons and the co-creation and the whatnots that some of us, at least people in my generation, might feel a bit less accustomed to. That's why you brought the oldie, yeah? So I think from my perspective, I've spent a lot of time in university, and I'm into political science in particular. And for me, this is really the university of today. This is really the place where we see global knowledge production taking place. This is, number two, the place where we decide who's in and who's out. This is a process of true democratization where we have decisions being put to the decision-making point. Who's going to be part of the discussion of solving the global problems of our interconnectedness that this film pointed out? So I just wanted to kind of bring us back to that perspective. Maybe it's clear to all of you, but we're not just talking about, you know, a small thing that goes on the margins of our society today. We're talking about how we are producing knowledge globally to solve the problems that we are facing. So thank you very much for organizing this opportunity to talk. And I love the title. And the answer is yes.
Now
of course
you've already
it is.
answered one of the questions.
Yeah,
that was supposed to
I?
be one of the final questions.
Good.
Sorry.
We'll get back to it, I'm sure. But also just to kind of bring this in now to the perspective that, so I work for the Swedish International Development Corporation, and we are, if you like, we're part of the more institutionalized, established actors when it comes to development cooperation. So, you know, you might think that there is a long distance between somebody like us and, you know, people who are actually working in the gaming industry, organizing hackathons, or being out in Tanga, working with local schools. But my job is very much, and all of my colleagues, is very much to lower the threshold so that we can involve this engagement, this enthusiasm, this innovative powers in the development cooperation work that we do. So this is really what I see very much as how we can join forces. And it's very clear, I think, to me that we need to be very aware of the fact that we're talking about aspects of power, we're talking about aspects of resources, we're talking about access, who is going to be in and out. And we also had one of the ladies in the movie talked about security issues. And I think we shouldn't forget that, because this is also an environment where we need to make sure that the people who are involved have the security networks that they need in terms of data protection, in terms of their personal integrity. So I think there are a lot of touch points between what might seem to be two different worlds, but we're really working to the common solution and the common goal of bringing collective solutions to our collective problems.
I love it. It feels like the movie had an impact on you.
It did.
Then we succeeded. But considering all digital innovations developed in Sweden, take Skype for example, and the vast experience and potential within Swedish cooperation countries, how can those living in poverty obtain a stronger role as product developers? And if you allow, from your perspective, how can we facilitate stronger global partnerships between Swedish developers on the one hand and young techies, programmers, engineers and so on in our cooperation countries?
Yes. What can SIDA do? What can we actually bring to the table of these very talented, engaged people? I think there are a few things. I think, you know, SIDA, we're often associated with being a financier. We finance a lot of programs. And yes, we do. We have a lot of you guys in the room, you're Swedish taxpayers, and we deal with a lot of your resources and challenge them, channel them to these actors. So that's one thing we can do. I think we could do that better. Here we have issues on how we recognize each other, because I have personal experiences from having tried to actually support specific hackathons. Lucas and I talked about this before. It's sometimes a bit difficult when you are working within a big Swedish bureaucratic organization and you want to target a specific hackathon or a specific event that just kind of mushrooms up from an event that wasn't really planned in your 3-year program budget.
Yeah.
the solution to that is that we have a lot of good partners. The one that you represent, for example, being one of them, where you have bigger ability to pick up and be responsive to things that come up, different initiatives. But financing is certainly one of the things we can do. But you've also, both of you, and all three actually, talked about the systemic effect that you want to achieve. You don't only want to have a hackathon, which is a fun thing, or an innovation lab that kind of blooms up and then dies out. We see a lot of that. You want to have a system-based impact if you're going to have a real relevance on the global problems that we're facing. And I think here, SIDA and the Swedish Development Corporation can play a small but perhaps significant role, because we can help you to link you up to people who are working on these issues in development countries, for example. We can help bring you to tables where there are more traditional decision makers taking more traditionally based type of decisions for institutions and for the structure of the world that it looks today. And I think one more thing that I'd like to mention, I have a long list, but I'll stop then.
We will definitely take you up on the last point.
Yeah, but the last point I'd like to mention is that on inclusion. Because even though this is a very kind of inclusive way that you're working, there are still a lot of thresholds, even for you, to have people to come in and access to be part of the kind of hackathonish world, if you like. 65% of secondary schools in low and middle income countries don't even have access to internet. 65%. So they're not in at all. 45% of women in these countries, they don't have an ID card. They cannot even kind of legally get online, because most of them probably won't be able to get a license. And I can go on talking about the kind of infrastructural, systemic problems that doesn't really include a lot of these people. Yeah. And here we can help by also working on some of the systems that allow more people to come in.
Thank you. Time flies when you're having fun, so I see that we are a little late on schedule. I will therefore open up for an open question to all of you, really trying to pinpoint the reason why we are here today. So we have 8 years left to carry out the 2030 agenda. How can we invest in gamers, techies, and programmers as global change agents? Not to forget the part that you just mentioned here, that there is a lot of there's work on inclusion and the people that are excluded as well, systematically, that we need to work on as well. But if we take it back to that, how can we invest actually, and what are the future pathways and methods and initiatives that we could explore to succeed? Just briefly, 1 to 2 concrete examples from your various perspectives. Would you like to start?
Yes, I can start. I work a lot with communication. So we have to spread out the word about these kind of issues. So the main focus, I would say, is investing I don't want to say the word influencers, but influencers in that way, but specifically streamers in this case that are gamers. Because influencers, streamers, they are the new people in power, because they reach out to a large audience, I would say. And if we, in that way, can work to come to a conclusion together, because we have worked with a lot of influencers, not only politicians and different things like that. And the next step would be streamers, because they get so many views on their live streams or whatever it is, and people are listening to what they're saying. These kids these days, they're acting like these influencers. They take so much from it. So I would say streamers in particular, but influencers too. Invest in that. Then I would say that gamers as a whole, it's such a it's a young community. Of course, there's older people, but a lot of the gamers are young. So I would say, like, listen to these people, see what they want to say, like work with developers, gaming developers in that way to spread the message, to have like educational things in games. It doesn't just have to be like a sports game or whatever it is. People learn things without even knowing. People play football games and learn flags, for example. These are like small things, but we can like take it to a bigger level, talk about important stuff, about poverty, about the climate and things like that, through gaming, I would say. So those two things.
Thank you. Lucas, would you like to come in as well?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the 2 points I would say, one is to continue using methods that allow for co-creation and allow for input from communities, from tech volunteers, or anyone who wants to contribute to various questions. That can be hackathons, ideathons, or other concepts as well. But I think it's important to not only keep organizing them and including them in the plans and activities that you do, but also making sure that we work together, and that those hackathons does not become, like you said, separate events that just pop up. You have a hackathon, amazing spirits and a lot of fun, and then there's a lot of good ideas that just pop up and die. So the second thing, I think, which is equally as important, is to make sure that we find a way to create long-term partnership and supporting these ideas, picking the ideas up that come from hackathons and various other activities, making sure that we can together, I mean, Openhack is a small organization. We organize hackathons. We rely on organizations and partnerships with organizations like SIDA, like the innovation hubs, with our case contributors and partners to come together and actually support these ideas, to pick them up themselves, supporting the teams that want to actually continue implementing these ideas. And finding a platform for that, I think, is crucial. A platform where we can sort of work on the long-term implementation of these ideas and gathering them in a good way.
Partnership and platform. Got it. Hussein, are you still with us? Do you want to pitch in?
Yeah, I think the panelists have shared amazing points, and I think I hear a lot of common terms being used, I think, from Patrick, from Lucas, and Mohammed as well. I think overall, I think what we really need to have is a playground or an ecosystem where various players, both from government sections, from the policies, from the advisors, even the innovators themselves, are involved in such a way that these ideas are not only meant to be one-time gigs or for the sake of showcasing or exhibiting or demonstrating, but the platform or the pipeline that should be established should take ideas not only from the innovation perspective, but from the innovation perspective all the way towards scalability and sustainability. Because at the end, we don't want these things just end up being shelf products or ideas. We really need to create an ecosystem where all the key players involved that are vital for any idea being scalable and sustainable are involved throughout the process along the way. Be it, as Patrick mentioned, from the government authorities are very traditional, unfortunately, like we have in Tanzania sometimes, who don't understand what really innovation is all about. It's not about tinkering and playing. It's about taking the idea towards something that can be commercial, something that can be sustainable and scalable at the same time. So I really think the main thing here is a sustainable, scalable pipeline, a playground that involves all the vital necessary key players throughout the process in this journey for any innovator.
Thank you. Patrick, would you like to have some final words on the question?
Very brief. I would say two things. We should learn to listen, which involves a lot of unlearning of old solutions and old ways of doing things to actually be able to absorb. So listen, number one. Number two, be more agile and flexible in the type of solutions that we provide, because some of these things cannot be planned in linear processes where you have 3-year perspectives. We need to become much more perceptive to the new knowledge production and the new way democracy is working.
Thank you. We will now very open up for questions from the audience. I think we have a microphone moving around. While you think about the questions, actually I have one right here, then we'll go directly.
Thank you so much. Patrick Prax from the Game Design Department at Uppsala University, I guess now the old university. Yeah, I really like this notion of catalytic potential, like catalyst as a catalyst for change. You mentioned differences in power, you mentioned problems with distributing power with access there. I really liked your discussion of not having even an ID card or other sort of issues that are not necessarily tech but extend beyond that. So changing these kind of things isn't necessarily a tech problem. Still, when you present your cases, they often seem to be around including young people and their ideas into existing structures. So I'm not really sure where the real struggle with power with these questions is happening in there. Hackers and breakers and makers, that sounds really, really interesting. But some of that sounded like, what I hear right now, that sounded like taming. So I'm wondering if in including people in a system that is producing a crisis, like digital platforms, like the tech industry that is building huge monopolies that are exploitative and that are destabilizing democracies. I'm wondering where there's the catalyst for a change, where there's the radical change that is happening in here. Because these companies are fine with the status quo. So there's my question. Where's the radical challenge for power in your projects or in your perspectives?
Great question. Who dares to dig into that one first?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So I think one important aspect that we use to make sure that these solutions actually do. So we work with open source. So all our hackathons we try to enforce open source, so that the people who actually contribute also have a power over how their solution is used. They can choose to take it forward, or they can work with the various stakeholders that are in place, case contributors or other actors that are involved, or maybe after hackathon finding new actors who might have listened in or seen the solutions. That's one aspect or one way of perhaps solving it.
Thank you. Hussein, would you like to come in too?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think just to add on what Lucas has mentioned, we talk about hackathons and breakers and makers. We aren't looking at only people who want to just get their hands on. What we're actually trying to do is trying to bridge the technology divide between the community and the industrialists. So what we currently are and have been doing is working very much close to what skills are required in the industry today, to what is actually being brought out in the classrooms today. So we're not only working with youngsters, we're working with adults and community members who do not have any form of a skill. I mean, give you an example of what Tanga looks like. You're looking at people who never even use a computer in their life, haven't even touched a computer in their life. So the digital divide is what we're trying to focus on by having inclusivity programs that actually bridge the missing elements in the industrialists to what is actually needed from the ground root, and then creating a platform in between that links both the industrialists and the community members to be included and actually growing with the growing tech movement right now.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to pitch in?
I would just say that I think I share your frustration in the sense that, yes, we are moving in many ways too slow. And yes, we need to be more inclusive. I mean, we need to be more daring. So absolutely. And this is a balance act, and we're right on it. But I think what we're seeing here today is some good examples on people who are really engaging at what is the cutting edge of trying to include more people to form the solutions that we need. So.
I think we have time for one more question, maybe two, since we're the last group.
Hi, my name is Max. I'm a Swedish journalist writing about tech. So for an outsider, this can be seen as quite the bubble. It's a lot of hard words and a lot of terms that are used almost exclusively within this sphere. So when I saw this in the program for Almedalsveckan, I set out to try to count like concrete proposals versus buzzwords. So the ratio I think is like 15-1 or something. I think only Mohammed said something like a concrete proposal, and then there was a lot of buzzwords. So I would like to challenge you. So please, can you say something concrete about how gamers can actually change the world, and not about engaging in a chain of interaction to maybe change something someday? Because this can be very abstract for outsiders. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, since that was actually my last question as well. So now we're saving time. Please, any concrete answers to this question? And sorry for, could have phrased it differently actually, but that's too late now, so dig in.
And to answer it, to give a concrete example. So, what, in terms of from the hackathon perspective, it's what we're bringing in is challenges from various case contributors, whether it's SIDA or Red Cross or UNHCR or any private organization. Even having a simple problem, biting it down to something that can be solved for a digital solution. It could be just how do we organize our volunteers in a more effective way. We've had apps developed on the topic that solve this problem, or at least gives you an idea of how to solve it, or whether it's an algorithm for visualizing in a better way how funds are distributed for different. So I'm not sure if I did answer your question, but sort of, yeah, I think it's quite easy to. There are a lot of good examples of how coding for humanity, or whether it's gamers or techies, can contribute to actually solve problems with digital solutions. We have a lot of them on our website if you'd like to check them out. Yeah.
Wonderful. Hussein, do you want to come in with something concrete?
I think the definition of gamers is something that people think is all about gaming. It's about actually a multidisciplinary skill that involves different elements towards a conclusion that's actually building a platform or a digital platform that can focus towards inclusivity. Give you an example of gaming today. You have people with virtually jumping into the metaverse or virtual reality. I don't know if you've heard about this term called digital twin. We actually try creating or replicating something can be done physically, but in the digital world, where you do all your theories, all your testings digitally, and then if it's successful digitally, you use the same elements in the digital world towards the physical world. That is something more concrete and much more practical. So this is the kind of understanding that people will have about gaming, techies. It's not about being a person who's going to be focusing on gaming only. I think the words have to be more aligned towards more inclusivity about the end goal of the topic. So for me, gaming is a discipline that has multiple skill sets in between towards solving or creating a platform that is more inclusive for all, one and all. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in? I mean, Mohammed, you actually did say something concrete, so you're off the hook, kind of. But maybe Patrick wants to come in.
I should let my time go to the people who actually work on this
Nice
because I would be a buzzworder in a sense, but I also think it's important to see some of the context around this. If I would then move it a little bit from what perhaps would be a hackathon environment, a lot of other engaging processes that we work on, for example, involves concrete discussions that I've worked on myself, engaging with women on clean cooking solutions, how best to design a clean cook stove so that it will actually be used in a rural village in, let's say, Tanzania. It's like a hackathon-ish situation because you have all the users coming together in a very limited time span to develop concrete solutions on, everything from how to develop the fan system, how much wood to be, it's pellets, not woods, to put into the system, when to organize the training sessions so that it allows them to enter the trainings while still taking care of their normal obligations. And we have a lot of kind of methods that looks very much like hackathonish in terms of structure to actually have the people involved being part of designing the solutions in a very, very concrete way.
Thank you. Any last words of wisdom from your end? Or maybe you want to stop, while on the high.
No, but what I wanted to say, it's a bit of the things that you all have been talking about. Like tech as a whole, it's a very it's such a privileged environment, I would say. A lot of people does not have access to most of these tech solutions, but as the world moves forward, it's a bit hard for other places to move forward. So I would say inclusivity in tech would be the biggest point that we have to start working with to reach the Agenda 2030, I would say.
Yeah, can we a round of applause for that? Thank you. I really agree. I think if we can take one thing with us today, I think it's really inclusion. So thank you, Patrick, also for bringing that up. Time flies when having fun. Thank you, panel. Thank you, all of you sitting here in the audience today. Thank you, everyone who tuned in online. By the risk of throwing out more buzzwords, I'm getting a little nervous, but I'll still need to say, let's not end the conversation here. Our door is open. I'm sure yours are too. Our digital gateway is open, and we will also be staying around here after the seminar should you have more questions or wants to discuss a little bit more with the panel. So with that said, thank you all for coming. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your Sunday wherever you are.